Out here, 67 years ago, 1,201 men, women and children perished when the Germans sank the Lusitania off the southern coast of Ireland. They went down with the ship or died from exposure in the sea, all within sight of the lighthouse on the old head of Kinsale. Just after midday on May the 1st, 1915, the Lusitania slipped her moorings at Pier 54 in New York for the last leg of her 101st transatlantic voyage. On board were 1,959 passengers and crew, who had been warned by the German authorities in newspaper advertisements that they were heading for a war zone. Few were worried. Least of all the captain, William Turner, a Cunard man for more than 30 years. The Lucy was one of the fastest ships afloat, the greyhound of the seas, with a top speed of more than 24 knots. She could outrun any German U-boat. But the German U-boats were having a great success. Two were operating throughout the Lusitania's last crossing. Between the 5th of May and the 7th, when the Lusitania was struck, the U-20 had sunk 3 British ships. The action prompted the Admiralty to send a warning to Captain Turner. Submarines active off the Irish coast, it said. The message was acknowledged. But life on board pursued its course. Dancing, deck games, and sumptuous meals. By lunchtime on May the 7th, the passengers were beginning to think about the end of their journey in Liverpool the next day. At 1 o'clock, according to the U-20 commander's log, a steamer with 4 funnels was sighted. At 2:10, Commander Schweiger fired 1 torpedo and noted, "An unusually heavy detonation takes place." The ship lists to starboard, and so bad is that list, the port lifeboats swing inwards, while the starboard lifeboats swing out too far. It's all over in 18 minutes, as the ship plunges in by the bows. 1,201 people, passengers and crew, including 94 children and babies, drown or die of their wounds or exposure. Rewards were offered to local fishermen to find the bodies. £1 for an English body, £2 for an American, £1,000 for the American millionaire Vanderbilt. The bodies were brought to Cove, then called Queenstown, to be buried in a mass grave. Anti-German riots broke out as the British government exploited the tragedy to the full. The Germans were accused of premeditated murder. German claims that the Lusitania was carrying contraband live munitions were denied or hushed up. It was the event that was to help change the course of history and made certain that America eventually would come in on the side of the Allies. But though official inquiries were unanimous in their condemnation of Germany, historians now have reason to believe that a cover-up started within hours of the sinking.
The cover-up by the Admiralty continued here in the old courthouse in Kinsale. What happened was that as soon as the bodies started to be brought ashore, the local coroner, John Horgan, decided, as was his right, to hold an inquest. As soon as the news got out about that inquest, the Crown Solicitor in Cork, acting on behalf of the Admiralty, tried to persuade Coroner Horgan to change his mind. But he decided to go ahead. And finally, the jury of 12 shopkeepers and fishermen from the local town of Kinsale returned their verdict. that the Kaiser and the German government were guilty of willful murder. The Lusitania file is held here at the Public Records Office in Kew. And the first fact that you discover is that that file is not complete. At the official inquiry that was held soon after the sinking, the evidence that was presented was at best selective. Indeed, you could almost say rigged so as to give no comfort to the enemy. So much so that when it was all over, the inquiry's chairman, Lord Mersey, is reported to have remarked it was a dirty business. This is the Lusitania file, and to the casual reader, it looks a pretty complete record of that event. But there are gaps in it, and the gaps usually seem to concern material which is both crucial and strategic. One of the most significant items that's missing is a batch of 5 signals that passed between the Admiralty and the ship in the hours before the torpedo struck. Patrick, how do we know that those signals are missing?
Well, they never appeared on the PRO shelves here. But we do know that they did exist, and we know that the Admiralty requested the Post Office, who were responsible for the operation of the stations, to forward them to the Admiralty. And here is a copy of the General Post Office letter dated 2nd of June 1915, doing exactly what the Admiralty wished. Now, we believe that this file was in existence as recently as 1972, but in August this year, the Ministry of Defence told me that no trace whatsoever of it could be found.
Well, what do you think those signals contained? I mean, what were they about? What were they telling the ship, or what was the ship telling the Admiralty?
Well, I mean, it's a matter of speculation, but it could have been, and I think it very probably was, Turner requesting permission to divert his ship to the north of Ireland, and perhaps being refused by the Admiralty, or given contrary instructions. We don't know, but on the face of it, their contents is likely to be of very vital importance.
So, we've a number of questions to answer. What was it that the Lusitania was carrying on her cargo holds on that last voyage? Why was she left unescorted when the Admiralty knew full well that her path lay across that of the U-20? And what's happened to those missing signals? Well, a number of people have tried to find the answers to those questions, and that's why we've been following for the past 5 to 6 months one of the most ambitious diving programs yet in the long history of Lusitania dives. She lies 300 feet down. From the old head of Kinsale to the wreck, it's 11.6 miles. The wreck has stubbornly refused to yield any of her secrets in the past. It's believed that the Admiralty have removed guns she was allegedly carrying. They've even removed the name. John Light, an American diver, made the most public and prolonged effort. He dived on and off for almost 12 years, and at the very limit of human endurance, and at the cost of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Light made his name in Kinsale not so much for the dogged attempts he made to succeed, but for the trail of debts and stories he left behind. Paddy O'Sullivan from Cork dived with Light for a few seasons.
There was a very high risk factor involved. The maximum limits of safety were 150 feet. People like John Light, when he came to Kinsale, walked at 300 feet, and I would call that 150 feet beyond the suicide zone, a very high risk factor.
What you're saying is he was essentially putting himself and any other diver who went to that depth, putting their lives at risk.
He was completely. John was a kamikaze pilot as regards diving, took very grave risks, and in fact one of his team came up one day and suffered a severe bend. I believe he lost his eyesight and his speech. He was given treatment on Kinsale Pier in a small chamber and never recovered from there. He was later flown to Switzerland and not seen of since.
Because John Light was the most determined of all the divers. Apart from the lack of technology, do you think he could have succeeded?
It's very doubtful with the limitations of his equipment. He was a victim of timing. He was trying to do tremendous work before the days of helium technology.
May this year, the start of the spring calms. The twin-masted brigantine Coos Bay moves out from an inlet on the Irish coast to take station over the Lusitania. She went out under sail, but below decks is the 20th century. The sea pup she carries is a miniature submarine equipped with an underwater TV camera. It's her job to carry out a survey of the wreck and establish just how the Lusitania lies. And that initial survey proves salvage is feasible. The next ship on station was the Miravag in August. By this time, an international consortium had been formed, headed by Oceaneering, a multinational giant in the diving business. The Miravag, Norwegian-owned, was equipped to stay in all but the worst of sea conditions and carry out a detailed survey of the wreck from stern to bow. The prize piece of technology is a remote-controlled submarine, Scorpio. It's the size of a family car, but it has rather more gadgets. It has an arm like a lobster claw that can grip, twist or hold. One of its operators was discovered in an Aberdeen pub where he was a champion player on the Space Invaders video game. Scorpio's eyes are its video cameras that can pan, zoom, and make it fully aware of its surroundings. The operators, who stay on the surface, locate a navigation point from the ship's drawings from which they can survey sections of the wreck in detail. The plan was to locate on the covered deck forward the place where 6-inch guns could have been concealed. Scorpio found the exact spot, but there was a gaping hole where on the ship's drawings the gun mountings had been shown, and the hole looked man-made. Obviously someone had been down there, but why should they want to blow a hole there? Colin Simpson wrote a detailed study of the Lusitania mystery, and he has one theory.
The first thing that strikes me is how clean the deck area is. That's the area around the forehatch. It has the sort of hallmarks of previous salvage. They have cleared the foredeck of any debris which might snag their wires. Then they would have cut their way down, either with blasting charges or acetylene torches. Then they will have lowered very large grabs in and pulled out whatever it is they were sent to pull out. And I'll be very interested to see if we find some grab marks.
But why would they want to remove the gun emplacements? Because everybody knew that there was a position there that guns could be mounted. What does that suggest to you?
Well, it suggests to me that they wanted to remove something else. That is the $64 question. Was it a gun, which they've denied was there? There's some circumstantial evidence it was. Or was it something even more embarrassing? What I am quite certain of from looking at this, and I've talked to Douglas Brown, Oceaneering's explosive expert, and Alfred Leyden, salvage master, he is adamant there's been previous work there with grab, and that the hull has suffered a massive internal explosion.
On the last day of the scheduled dive, good weather and good underwater visibility. The survey team are determined to bring up something tangible from the Lusitania. The plan is to go for what sailors call the soul of the ship, the bell.
That's the mast. Do you reckon it's a mast? Yeah. It's round, isn't it? Yes, mast. Bell. Bloody good show! Hey, found it! Bloody hell! Get it back.
What's the number, please, Doug?
I can take it off.
230.
It's wide open.
Bell.
There we are.
Someone take that up.
Ding. Bloody dong.
Oh, great.
This bell is on the forward mast over the crow's nest, and it has a sad significance. When the lookout, able seaman Quinn, spotted the wake of the torpedo, he called out a warning, and he also rang the bell. It's not been seen nor heard for 67 years.
Well
If you get that, you'll be worth a few points round bars around the world, Jim.
It's only 14 feet. The visibility is 30
The
feet.
trouble really starts when the Scorpio uses its claw to grasp the bell. The bell weighs 250 pounds, far heavier than the Scorpio's designed to cope with. Somehow, out of trim and unbalanced, she must propel herself over 300 feet to the surface. It's a long, long struggle. Scorpio would normally ascend in minutes. This ascent takes an agonizing 1¼ hours, and no one knows precisely where she is in relation to the ship above. On the surface, a boat is standing by to go to Scorpio's aid. Meanwhile, below, the submarine's grip is loosening as the claw, strained by the weight, begins to lose hydraulic pressure. Suddenly, she's located directly under the Mirovag and bumping the salvage vessel's hull.
As soon as you've wrapped it up, give me one, come back.
One of the divers is sent in to do the dangerous job of lashing a line to the sub to pull her out of the water and to secure the bell, which is now in danger of falling from the weakened arm.
30 feet. But a diver out in a boat, right? We bring it to the surface. There's nothing I can do with a current. There'll be a hole, but an eye through that.
No, I doubt there might be a net. What the divers doing is just checking for the cable on.
Yeah. Our thing's heading that way.
Who's that, Ollie? Drive away from the side of the ship.
Finally, after 67 years, the soul of the Lusitania sees the light of day again. The raising of the bell is not only a major psychological moment, it guarantees that the next phase of the operation will go on.
Right, ferret strikes again.
But already Oceaneering was planning another dive, and with a much bigger ship, and the very latest in diving technology.
What's the Mirovag given us? How useful has the Mirovag operation been?
Well, it's dotted the I's and it's crossed the T's. We now know precisely where almost everything of interest or importance is. For example, we knew exactly where the bell was and we got it. We also now know where the purser's safe is, the specie room, where perhaps there's God knows what, the mail room, the butler's pantry, where the first-class dining silver is. In fact, what the Mirovag has done is it's turned the original little survey we did on the Coos Bay into something of marine archivist standard. Now, what we need now is to get people down there, better technology, so it's time to bring in the big fellas and see what they can do.
A month later came the Archimedes, one of the most modern dive support ships afloat. Her normal job is in the North Sea securing Britain's oil supplies. But there's not a man on board who isn't as pleased as Punch to be on this Lusitania dive.
That's that silk really soft, is it?
To get it a wreck like the Lusitania, to be able to work on her for sustained periods, needs the best of diving technology. "300 feet below the Archimedes is a diving bell suspended on an umbilical cord. Out of the diving bell, moored just alongside the hull of the Lucy, the divers can swim onto her. Divers had only dreamed of this 20 years ago. Now, oil money, the North Sea, and the dramatic strides in diving technology have made it possible.
Gonna pass up to Ross. Ross has got it. Show us on the camera, Ross.
Oh, just hold it on the cuts you've made, will you? Yeah, just hold it on the cuts. We want to see if there's any
hint of another bulkhead behind that or anything? There's a bulkhead to the right, Roger.
The divers down there live almost exactly as astronauts would in an orbiting space satellite. For up to 4 weeks, they'll be in this totally enclosed environment, and for them to emerge into the outside world for just an instant would be certain death. They've been slowly pressurized with a mixture of helium and oxygen to a living depth of almost 300 feet. And once in that environment, they must stay until they're brought up.
So we can see what you're doing. Okay, we're ready when you are.
Think of the bell just as their commuting vehicle. It gets them down to the job and gives them shelter if they need it while they're there. And it then gets them home again after their 8-hour shift at work. Home is a saturation chamber, 20 feet long and 7 feet in diameter. For 28 days at a time, they live, eat and sleep here.
Okay, so you can't see whether there's anything in the species room.
Tell him to hold it there.
Okay, just leave your camera there as it is in a moment. We can watch it clear and see if we can see anything with you, okay?
No, hold it on that shot he's taken. I want to see the edge of that.
Okay, hold it on the shot you were on. Mike wants to have a look at the edge of it.
I want to see what he's cut through.
Just want to see what you've cut through, mate. So just hold it on the cuts you've made, will you?
Not only can the divers stay down and work in relays round the clock, they can also take down their own camera, which allows the experts up above to advise them, watch them, and monitor their safety every inch of the way.
Now we come to the species room, which we've already done some.
Once a day, the historians, ship construction experts, the engineers and the dive masters plan strategy and try to assess from submarine scans just what state the hull and superstructure are in and how best to work down there.
The higher one is pretty much tight above that.
Yeah.
It's an eerie and alien world. Even in good visibility, you can only see 60 feet. Even so, it's like walking through a deserted city in a fog. In this case, the city is lying on its side. The diver needs an extra pair of eyes. On this dive, the remotely controlled Scorpio scouts ahead to locate and then pinpoint the area in which he's to work.
Now look at this. Now that's where this glass dome is for the ballroom. We haven't got a plan of it. It's here. There you go. That confirms where we are. Yeah, that's it.
Without some guidance from the surface, a diver could wander over these grey metal plates and through the twisted debris without any idea of where he is. The Lusitania was the Leviathan of the seas. The Titanic had gone down and her only rival was her twin sister ship, the Mauretania. Even by today's standards, the Lusitania was big. 660 feet long, over 100 feet on the beam, and 200 feet in height from the tip of her funnels to the bottom of her hull. She could carry over 3,000 passengers and crew. She was as big as a 50-story office block laid horizontally on the seabed. The cabins, ballrooms, staterooms and dining rooms were built in the style of the most luxurious land-based hotels and furnished on an even more grandiloquent scale and size. It's all still down there now, battered but still largely intact. A time capsule evacuated in just 18 minutes on May the 7th, 1915. The 4 funnels have broken off. The superstructure, those elegant promenade decks, outside cabins, the bridge and the walkways mostly collapsed, but her main hull 95% intact.
The ship must have broken its back when the ship came down and the bow hit. It seemed like a lot of things had been thrown forward, like the bridge is out of place and the rest, because I guess the whole structure's being pushed forward. And you can see where the ship kind of has broken its back. It goes on. It's not a complete straight line. It's a little bit of a V, if you know what I mean. And the up near the bow where the cargo hold is, it's completely blown away where the torpedo must have hit. You know, it's just not a hole the size of a man. You're looking at, 30, 40 feet hole kind of thing, and all ripped apart.
Come back.
Just before the dive started, the Ministry of Defence sent a warning telegram to the salvage company. On the one hand, it seemed to deny that there were explosives on board, but on the other, it warned sternly that anything found should be handled with extreme caution. The MOD then disclaimed all responsibility for any event that might occur, all of which reinforced our belief that it wasn't only a torpedo that exploded.
It looks like a cherry bow and a champagne, exactly as he said.
Oh, I guess tight the hull gently.
Easy.
Seeing is deceiving in the salvage business. It's only when the barnacles are chipped away that you really know what you've got hold of.
Okay. Thanks, Phil. It's not a ball. No way. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Thanks, Phil. It's not a ball. Oh, with the back end. Some sort of pressure. BSP thread on it. False alarm.
Or was it?
There's a zinc coating on that on it.
At this point, the explosive experts started to have their doubts.
I wonder what the main part is. I think that's not steel, not that colour. That's steel.
Things started to get suspicious.
Is that TNT? No, I don't think so. Sure. Can we take it on the after deck and break it open?
Yeah, take it on the after deck.
Could be TNT, but possibly torpedo even. Did they have it in the First World War? Yeah. It's explosive anyway, that's for sure.
Yeah, cordite type or something.
Do it the world of good.
It's not a depth charge.
Yes, a depth charge. It's a contact depth charge. It's fired now. Right.
But I mean, is it First World War, Second World War?
Well, I don't know. If you forget the dates of the brasswork, you could get an idea. But we used stuff that was First World War and the Second World War.
What's all this?
It was, in fact, a World War II anti-submarine mortar, a depth charge.
Very likely just the mortar tube, the propellant.
So I mean, this one didn't actually explode then?
Well, this one's not on the contact. It hasn't exploded yet. Obviously, it's still here. But it's quite possible it could explode right now.
It's a lethal-looking thing.
Certainly make your eyes water.
It was too lethal to be left on deck, too lethal to be sent to the bottom.
Do you want it anywhere in particular?
Far away as possible.
All it needed was a gentle nudge from an ounce of plastic explosive.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's real stuff.
That was almost a fatal mistake. The find reminded us that in the Second World War, the wreck of the Lucy could shelter enemy subs. So Allied shipping took no chances and depth charged as soon as their sonar picked up a signal. Most of the crew of the Archimedes are used to such bangs. Many of them were in the Marines, the SBS, or Army Ordnance, before they went into commercial diving. These are collar charges, 28 pounds of plastic explosive being prepared to be wrapped around the Lusitania's prop shafts and literally slice off the propellers when they blow. At a conservative estimate, each blast will net £100,000. That's what each prop is worth. The money's needed because the quest for the Lusitania's secrets is going to cost the salvage consortium at least £500,000. We're here on the port prop. There's a 1.5 knot tide running and the diver, remember, is 300 feet down. This 7-foot long length of giant toothpaste is in fact a combination of two powerful plastic explosives which will wrap round the prop shaft like a particularly lethal scarf.
Brian, Doug would like to know, does it fit all the way around? Okay, you ready to take the glove off?
He says it does. Is there any overlap on it?
Brian,
Change, it makes it much simpler for him.
there's a bit of change on the charge. They want the connector on the top of the shaft and the ropes wrapped around and back tied on the top, okay? Roger, the connection is made and everything is secure.
Okay. Ready, fire. Fire. Fire.
And she comes off clean as a whistle. Midnight and the prop finally comes up. 22 tons of phosphor bronze right at the limit of the ship's crane. As the prop leaves the water, the ship lists 10 degrees to port. The crew edges nervously to the other side. A dangerous moment, but a rewarding and a profitable one. £100,000 on board, wages, and the dive can go on.
Tremendous. Really nice.
Beautiful, mate. Bloody lovely.
Move up.
Over the next few days, Oceaneering brought up 2 more propellers and 2 anchors. Rarity value alone made that haul worth an estimated £500,000. But everyone wanted to get back to the dive as soon as possible, and the next target was the ship's strong room, or specie room.
Okay, he wants to speak to you, doesn't he?
Yes?
Yeah, tell him that we've...
If there were going to be any treasures on the Lusitania, then this is where they would have been stowed for the crossing.
Yeah, we're just burning the pipe out of the way that's in the hole. We're getting the TV camera in there. We've got a TV camera at the moment. We've had a good look, but we can't get it right in until we remove this pipe.
All same yesterday?
Just the same.
Okay, can you see anything in there himself?
Negative.
Negative.
Okay, we'll be down in a minute.
He's got nil viz. Yep. Make it hot, you say? It's hot. It's cold. What's it look like now?
Go down to his.
Put your camera in there and have a look around there while we're waiting for the other one to clear, in any case. Okay, mate. Okay, move very gently when you get towards the hole, because then we can find, you know, we might be able to get a decent view inside there. And beam it right the way round, starting from left and going round.
There's 5 feet of silt in here, the accumulated detritus of 67 years. The room, we know, is the size of an average living room, but it's filled halfway up the walls with mud. Whatever is in there lies somewhere on the bottom, so the diver, apart from acting like a fish, now has to start behaving like an earthworm. He could find diamonds somewhere in that mud. There might even be bullion. And it's rumoured one passenger, Sir Hugh Lane, the most famous art dealer in his day, was bringing over a Rubens. The ship's manifests don't help. No one shipping anything of value ever declared more than they had to.
Put your camera in there and have a look around there while we're waiting for the other one to clear, in any case. Okay, mate.
Hold the diver slack. He's found 3 boxes of watches so far and 4 boxes of silverware. No, I very much doubt if it is. If you send the stuff up to the top as soon as we get a container for you, then we can tell you. It should be very quick and easy to tell.
Just hold the heading call here.
Alright?
Just hold it use on neck.
Right, go on, keep going.
Yeah, but
According to the manifest, these spoons were silver-plated. The plating's mostly gone now after all this time in the water. But it's still a most unexpected find with the head of Lord Kitchener. We found out later that they were a special offer to try to help to raise funds for the Allied war effort. There turned out to be almost 7,000 of them. The deeper the divers dig, the quicker the pace of the finds, and the quicker the Lusitania's past reaches the surface. Down inside one of the funnel casings, they discover a place where crockery from the first-class dining salon has been stowed. Some of it has miraculously survived unbroken. And here it is. On the back, it reads Cunard Steamship Company, Wedgwood, Etruria. One crewman asks, "Are we diving on the Etruria then?" There's always a risk with fragile crockery and other such artifacts that the bumpy 300-foot journey to the surface might damage something precious. Indeed, there was one item that the divers insisted on carrying up themselves. Nor would they tell us what it was until they had it safely in their diving bell and had carried it through the decompression hatches to their saturation chamber. "94 children and babies died when the liner was lost, and the divers wanted to be sure that this sad relic came up unharmed from the world of the Lusitania." Out of the mud and silt in the specie room and the surrounding area was to come over the next few days a variety of objects. Some of them were valuable, some of them were intriguing. These, for instance, are mechanical time fuses, a hint of the warlike nature of some of the Lusitania's cargo. The divers found gold watches, and these were elegant jugs and food dishes, all stamped with the name Cunard Steamship Company and made by Wedgwood. Enough to set a full place for a few hundred people once they'd been brought ashore.
Oh, mate, that must be a brass spring as well. Yeah.
There were more substantial items like this bridge wing telegraph, used by the captain when he was docking in New York or Liverpool.
These are beautiful, aren't they? Yeah.
And there was the ship's whistle too, last heard 67 years ago in New York. But the most unlikely find of all was made down in the thick silt 300 feet below. Rolls of silent movie film, uncanned and lying raw, 5 feet under the mud. It was such an amazing find that we called in one of Britain's leading film experts to try and save the film. Laurie Ward scrambled from his London home to the Archimedes in under 8 hours.
On the actual film, which is fantastic. I think the story is here. There will be some stills we'll be able to get from, I'm sure, but at least it will never run on a machine. You can see very distinctly there.
The film is called The Carpet from Baghdad. A triumph of film production, wrote the magazine The Bioscope in December 1914. It's been completely lost until now, and this is all that remains. Meanwhile, a real-life drama was being played out in Europe, World War I. Britain was up against it with only a few weeks' supply of munitions. So the government turned to the United States. But because America was neutral, there was a total ban on arms exports. The British resorted to smuggling, shipping on passenger liners what they claimed to be empty shell cases and fuses and labelled non-explosive in bulk. All along, we'd hoped to find evidence of the smuggling, but we didn't know precisely what that evidence would be. At first, we thought these rather uninteresting-looking objects were brass fittings. It was only when we got them back to London that we found that they had a far more sinister purpose. Well, British naval intelligence had its own agents at work on both sides of the Atlantic to make sure that these vital supplies got through. So here at the old Admiralty building in London, they knew exactly what the Lucy was carrying. And this, in fact, is what we'd found.
It's an artillery fuse, and what's more, we think that it might have been live when it was brought up from the bottom, because when the BBC armourers steamed it clean, they found what they believe to be traces of explosive. We've also been able to trace exactly where they come from and what they are. Now, you can just make out that they were made by the US armaments firm Bethlehem Steel in 1914. You can see the BSC there. And they're the nose fuses for a variety of large shells, mortars and howitzers. The divers found case after case and said that there were many more of them scattered individually like confetti on the seabed. Well, we believe that this find proves for the first time conclusively that the Lusitania was indeed carrying contraband live munitions.
Well, in fact, quite contrary to the evidence presented, the shell cases, which were said only to be cases for proof purposes, were filled shells. And it is possible, because it happened on a previous voyage, that the percussion fuses, or some of them, were also stowed amongst the shells. Now, this would have caused, when the torpedo hit, this would have caused an enormous explosion. It was claimed that the fuses were stowed right aft. They said in the ship's magazine, and I believe we found some at the after end of the ship. The shells were certainly stowed on the lower orlop deck here, immediately below the bridge, exactly where the torpedo hit. Now, I am not sufficiently expert to say whether the torpedo could have set off the filled shells unless there were fuses there as well. But certainly there was a very large second explosion there. And this undoubtedly was the reason for the ship sinking with such horrible rapidity.
Would it be normal practice to actually stow munitions, as described on the manifest, and fuses, possibly, in the same place, on the lower orlop deck?
No, it would not have been normal practice. It would have been bloody lethal.
The Archimedes stayed on station until the winter gales put paid to the dive. 5 months and 3 ships. But how far had we got in solving the mystery of the Lusitania?
Well, I think we've dived both in the archives and on the ship. The archives have told us she was carrying explosive munitions. Looking at the ship, we can see that something exploded where those munitions were stored. Secondly, the archives tell us that far fewer signals were sent to the Lusitania than we actually know were sent. Thirdly, the archives indicate a degree of covering up, which I find suspicious. There's always going to be a question mark after the name Lusitania. What I do feel will resolve a lot of problems is when we get into the cargo hold next year. Either the cargo will have exploded and it won't be there, or it will not have exploded and it will be there. That's the big question as far as I'm concerned.
The whistle of the Lusitania sounds over her grave. Is it imagination, or is there a note of questioning in that voice? After all the work on her this summer, we have to accept that there are still so many unanswered questions. But the lure of the Lusitania is strong. Sooner or later, someone will be back to try and find the answer to the mystery once and for all.